Hello, everyone. Today we have our regular DevSync. We'll share updates from the previous week and plans for the future. Before all that, I'd like to introduce our new team member, Samuel. Samuel is our new Director of Protocol Engineering. He'll be helping us to deliver on the protocol development and many other initiatives. So yeah, excited to have him on board. Welcome. With that out of the way, Ivan, you are first on my screen. Do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So during last week, I was working in order to get the multi-replica support landed soon. So at first, I opened PPR, which was related to the again limit of the plot size, to limit the plot size in the number of pieces. So in the consensus, so we actually merged it. Apart from that, we had some discussions about multi-replica with Nazar, and I actually opened several pull requests related to that. There are two implementation of those. One of which is it basically introduces several new concepts like multiplot, which is which basically supports having the multiple plots underneath. And another PR basically is about the making the multi-replica support from top to bottom. So basically, we just wrap all of our farmer and just start several replicas of the farmer. Also, apart from that, there was a bug discovered by Search today. I actually opened and fixed that issue with the raising the plot. Also, apart from that, there was one another minor bug related to the building WASM binaries. Yeah, I also fixed that, and yeah, I guess that's it from my side.
Awesome. Any questions to Ivan about any of that?
No, but can you give us an update on this week, what your priorities are going to be, Ivan, what you're expecting to achieve?
Yeah, of course, yeah. I just forgot about that. Yeah, but basically, right now, I will try to finalize ASAP the multi-replica support. And meanwhile, I will do the documentation for the farmer, for the audit process, so that everything will went well for auditors.
Awesome, thanks, Ivan. And that's not just for auditors. I mean, that's a key reason why we're putting emphasis on it right now. It's gonna really be for everybody. But please, whenever you get a draft of that, I get about 50 GitHub emails a day, so I probably won't see it. So just ping me directly whenever you have a draft of that, so I can take a look at it, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I will send the VPR link in VPM.
Okay, thanks, Ivan. Serge, you're next.
Okay, so regarding Moonriver and Killed new parachain lease, I think they made a swap like yesterday, and both parachains, they have same para IDs, so relayer was not affected and everything works as expected. Apart from that, most of the time I was focusing on Ethereum integration, specifically on processing EVM blocks. So the current challenge is that RPC returns blocks only as JSON, and we need to submit them as binary. And so there are few possible solutions to this, and I'm still doing my research. What are the options? And another area of efforts was grandpa verification. I did some updates on Relayer based on the updates on the pilot feeds made by that. And we had some discussions what would be the next steps. And I think this will be my priority for this week. Specifically, we discussed that we will remove finality proof as an optional parameter for put, and this will be included in the block if there is no justification already. And yeah, this will require decoding finality proofs on the relayer, and yeah, this is going to be the main challenge. I guess that's all.
Aren't there types already for decoding?
There are types on the Rust code, Substrate code, but not
in
on the
metadata.
Polka. Yes, Polka.js doesn't support it. I already had a conversation with Jaco. I created an issue on Polka.js regarding this, and he said that yeah, this is expected. It just returns bytes.
Okay. Okay, interesting. All right. Any other questions to Serge?
Yeah, I left a comment in Notion in this list of Ethereum services. I really tested all of them for about, I don't know, a couple of years. I worked with GridNode and everything, and in Fura, and I left my feedback in there in terms of.
Yeah, I saw.
how I
Thanks.
see it.
I forgot to mention that. Yeah, spreadsheet is on Notion now.
Yeah, for now, for me, QuickNode is far the best, the faster.
Awesome. Glad you guys got a chance to review that. Serge, just in terms of priorities, the grandpa feeds validation will be primary. If you get blocked or whatever on that, or you get some downtime, then the ETH integration would come next. But just make sure that you're prioritizing the grandpa finality.
Sure.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Serge. Ozgun, you're next.
Okay, so there are lots of changes in Subspace desktop. Most of them are bug fixes and new features. So let's start with, for example, Leo discovered that launch on boot preference was not stored. We fixed that. Now, when the user enables or disables it, when we relaunch the app, it remembers the configuration. Leo also had some new changes on folder directories, tested the new changes on that. Fixed some typos on Telegram link and Subspace name in the desktop app. They were not capitalized and link was redirecting to wrong Telegram channel. macOS was starting as a Unix executable with a terminal in the background, which was ugly. We fixed also that. Most importantly, we disabled the previous advanced page. It was for importing the mnemonic. We disabled that feature, and then we imported the new feature of having a reward address. So now we are allowing the user to import their reward address, and this is now the new advanced page. So we will demonstrate it, so I can talk about it later on that. We also removed the password page. So previously we did have a password page for hashing the signing key and in case of importing mnemonic, stuff like that. We don't need the password no longer, and that's why we got rid of it. It's more simpler and easier user experience in that way. Updated the README. Also discussed with Leo about the new changes need to be made on estimating the blockchain size. Leo fixed that. There is still a small bug on macOS or on my machine maybe about that, but we will fix that very soon. We also added verification to the importing the reward address. So now front end makes the verification, and it's done dynamically when you are typing the reward address. Other than that, we fixed some other bugs. For example, the new feature of importing the reward address when you supply no reward address, there was a bug. It was not getting the default public key. We also fixed that. It's getting the default public key when there is no reward address specified. The second most important thing, other than the reward address, is keyboard shortcuts were not working on Mac because there were no menu for Mac. I added the menu, imported the keyboards, and there was a regression about remembering to launch on boot preference. I also fixed that. And that's all about Subspace Desktop as a very high level. We do have a demo, but I suggest let's wait for Leo and then we do the demo.
Yeah, I think let's do the demo at the end after everybody gives their update.
Okay.
But yeah, I do want to go through that. And I also want to say thanks a lot, Oskin and Leo, for working over the weekend. I saw both of you guys were pushing a lot of commits to try to resolve some of these bugs. So we really appreciate that. It is really critical for us to get this desktop app up to date as soon as possible. So thank you. I do have one question. One topic I think we might need to discuss, Nazar, is this issue where we were trying to estimate the blockchain size and that was just hanging for a long time. Because there was something with the RPC node that it was getting overwhelmed with requests. Did we get that resolved? Are we all on the same page with that now?
We did resolve that. Leo found a way to query the Polkadot. Maybe Leo, you want to talk on that more?
Okay, we can cover that on the
yeah.
side then.
Yeah, I discovered that there was a RPC method in the storage that returns the count of root blocks. That is almost the same that the segment index. And we were able to do that in just one call. And before that, we were querying block by block, finding this root block stored event that contains the segment index. So it was really slow. And right now it's just one query. So it's supposed that is fixed because it's just one query. And after that, we disconnect to the public API because we don't use it anymore.
Got it. Is that does that still need to get released, or is that already fixed for the implementation that we have?
It's on main. It's on main. The only way, the only place is not working is on Osgun Mac when he built the app, but we don't know why. We have to check that. Maybe it's a new permission connecting to the network in the Tauri config. I don't know. We have to check that because I'm running right now in Windows and Linux and it works.
Other than that, by the way, we published a new version, a new pre-release. It's just on Discord, and because of the big changes, it's versioned as 0.3.0 instead of 0.2 when it starts. About
that version change, I got a script in the index page that should compare the old version config with the new version config. So when the users installs this new version and they had, I don't know, already a local storage configuration and an existing node and farmer folder, we can migrate this configuration to the new things we are using and not having this connecting forever problem. But I want to do that at the end, like in the final step, like adding to the final step.
Yeah, one comment on the hang during start. The reason for that might be twofold. One is what you described. The other one is that we had a low limit on the WebSocket connections, so sometimes you cannot connect at all. It's not just it's slow, you just cannot connect. So it would be nice for UI to not get stuck if you cannot connect, but rather proceed with like unknown estimation, let's say. But it will at least work if it ever happens again. Long term, we will not want to connect to the public RPC at all, but for now we have to. So we probably want to have some kind of way to not get stuck, at least if it fails. So like try to connect for, I don't know, 3 seconds, and if it doesn't connect, just move on.
The plan for this week will be, by the way, importing the new partial plotting, and as soon as that completes, it will be multi-replica.
Okay, we'll have to see if the code base of the repository is actually compatible with the rest of the network, but maybe we'll have to do upgrade.
Yeah, we will see. I don't think there will be a big issue. I will just try to update the dependencies for Subspace, and we will see.
Okay, thanks, Osman. Leo, you're next, actually. You're muted.
Yeah, Leo.
Well, I don't want to repeat all the issues we solved that Osgun already said. So as a new thing or update in the weekend, I was working in having this telemetry server for us without this limit in the client's counter. So we got it. I find a way to deploy it first and how to configure it, where the parameters. And after that, I realized that actually we don't have to need to edit anything in the code. Everything can be configured through a .m file for the front end and through CLI commands on the backend. And only with that, we can just bootstrap this and maybe a few changes in, if we want to run this with Docker, we have to do a few changes that are hard-coded in the Docker, in the main Docker file. Only that. It's just one line. And after that, we can have this telemetry server for us in telemetry.subspace.com. And also we have to add, obviously, this telemetry endpoint to our documentations and to our app. So everybody will be submitting to our telemetry and the Polkadot telemetry codes. So I probably will be working in that this week. I will try to have this working this week. So for the next release, we will have our clients connected to this new telemetry, and we will know how many nodes exactly we have. So
Okay,
as you said, Nazar, we probably don't need a fork unless we want to add some icons or change any color, thing like that. But for now, I think that we don't need that. It's not necessary to have this just working.
Okay, you have the thread in engineering chat. Can you comment there about that parameter in Docker file that you mentioned?
Yeah,
Maybe we
I
can
will send it.
make it more generic on their side, so we don't have to like change it at least. Okay, do you plan to look into that WebSocket limit thing to update deployments and look into Nginx and update Terraform documentation?
Oh yeah, we need to apply to all environments the max WebSockets in the public RPC. But I don't know if I apply that and reset the Docker container, it will work, right?
Yeah, I just changed the parameter and did Docker compose upd, and it just restarted, and everything is fine.
Okay, I was afraid to maybe put it down and delete the container or everything.
You can look at the farmnet, the active farmnet. That's the only one I edited manually.
Yeah, and we need to replicate that configuration in the all three environments. And I was checking the Nginx configuration. I think that probably with 2 workers and increasing the maximum connections to, I don't know, 2,000 will be enough for now.
Okay. Yeah, eventually we'll have multiple machines anyway.
Yeah, and maybe after a few months, we will need a load balancer and maybe some more advanced features. But for now, I think that increasing the workers and the max connection will be enough.
All right. Any questions to Leo?
Yeah, just to comment, this telemetry service, getting like a very, very simple version of this, doesn't need to be branded, doesn't need to be like any forks to the code, like Nazar saying. Getting that deployed as quickly as possible is a big priority, so that we can continue showing the momentum. And we actually don't even know, right, how many farmers we have on our network anymore. So this is a big deal. So if you can get that done like today or tomorrow, Leo, that would be great. Even if we don't have it deployed, yet to where we can count it, but at least as long as we have the infrastructure to support this, and then we can update our documentation and we can announce to the community, to restart. But just getting this basic infrastructure support is actually blocking a lot on the business side about trying to actually measure and incentivize more participation in the testnet right now.
Yeah, getting this working took me like a couple of hours, and having this in production probably will take me something like the same. I think we can have this for today, but it will not show any data for now up to the new release of the
Sure.
client.
Sure.
We will have to this working before that. No problem.
Sure. And did I hear you right that we can actually have the nodes pointing to both telemetry servers at the same time? So we'll still show the 1000 cap on Polkadot, but we'll have the better analysis on our telemetry.
Theoretically, the telemetry endpoint in the chain spec is an array, and you can put a lot of telemetry endpoints. And I tested, and it was working at least for telemetry Polkadot and telemetry Subspace.
Okay, that's what we will do. Okay, thank you, Leo, and once again, great progress on the desktop app from both of you guys.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Lucheng, you're next.
Okay. So last week, aside from adding a simple README for writing the executor, I was primarily working on the feature of upgrading the secondary runtime on primary runtime upgrade. So I have sent a PR, and it has been merged. This week, I was planning to work on merging the executor binary, but Nether is interested in it and has started. So I work on the other stuff. There are a few things in my mind, like the bundle equivocation, like move the fraud-proof verification from the runtime to the client completely. And there are also a few like knowing problems. Like some are introduced in some recent commits, and some are already exist for a while. We can discuss more like on our portable thinker call. Yeah, this is all I had.
Okay, questions?
Yeah, just to give some feedback on the roadmap and priorities, Lucheng. So we're not going to have any decoupled execution in the first iteration of Gemini once we get to incentivized testnet. So we're just going to run it with a farmer, as a full node that does everything. But then very soon thereafter, we're going to plan to do this decoupling and to have just this one trusted executor on the network. So this is still, a big priority to get this because it's part of our long-term roadmap, of course, and it's a long lead time task. But I think what we can do is now, if you do get to a stopping point where you're like, okay, what do I do next? And we do have all these security tasks around bundle equivocation and transaction spamming and all these different equivocation attacks we can do. Those are important, but before we get started on those, I think building in support for the hard spoons and the regenesis is going to be a big part, something we need to prepare for incentivized testnet as well, because we're going to be doing this multiple times. And I know that you have done this at ChainX in the past. So if you can start thinking about that and talking to Nazar or talking to Ved, who's going to be working on the forkless runtime upgrades, to make sure that that is all aligned. And also talking to Sam, because Sam is going to be sort of managing this broader process. But that is something that we need to figure out and make sure, like, if there's something we need to change in our protocol to support this, that we're prepared for that.
So are we going to use the focused runtime upgrade, like for the transition, like from the current testnet to the like Gemini? Are we going to use that?
We'll probably start Gemini fresh, but after that, whenever we can, we'll prefer runtime upgrade. If you cannot
Okay.
do runtime upgrade, we'll need to like re-import state into the new chain so we don't lose it. We just need to have a
Okay.
process how to do it so we like don't have to like rush and do something we never did before.
Okay. So as long as we don't have like incompatible like changes to the protocol, I think yeah, we are happy.
So just to be as specific as possible, we'd like to do one rehearsal of a hard spoon on our non-incentivized testnet before we go to incentivized testnet. So for example, the next time we do a breaking change, which I think we're gonna have at least one before we get to incentivized testnet, we'll have one breaking change. We'd like to be able to re-import state, just the balances specifically, that's the only thing we need to re-import. Re-import the balances or the farmer reward balances into after the hard fork. So we'd like to demonstrate that we can do that on our test network before we have to do it once on our incentivized test network.
Okay, so we would like to like snapshot current like balances. Okay. I think that is like if we are going to only snapshot the balances, which is pretty simple, I think. So
It's easier second time than the first time. And we like most of us never did it before, so
okay.
your expertise is very helpful there.
Okay. Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Lu Cheng. Justin, you're next.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. So last week, I was continuing to work with Leo and Oskin a little bit on testing out the different versions of Subspace Desktop they've been working on. Wrapped up the Discord setup on the new bot that I was working on after the scam attack that we had, and wrote up a little bit of a guide for the new bot. I sent that into, I think it was the general private chat. Had a meeting with a potential intern that me and Jeremiah had been talking to. Gave some feedback on that. Had a meeting with the ambassadors over the weekend as well, where we had our second cohort go over their new little mini hackathon projects they had been working on. So that's moving along nicely as well. Worked on a small update to the README. Had some chat with Nazar and Yvonne about that. Going to be submitting the final PR to get that merged in today. Wrote up a simple release flow for Subspace Desktop as well. Just to kind of start establishing some processes for that, so we can all make sure we're on the same page as like, next steps and everything for the testing process and things along those lines. And beyond that, last week was just continuing to work with the community team and the business team on some of the various initiatives we've been working on. And just kind of continuing to button up some of the things on our end prior to, the next steps that we've been working on as a team. Moving into this week, going to test out that new pre-release version that Ozgun had mentioned, the 0.3.0. Make sure there's no, all the major bugs that we resolved are wrapped up in there. Have a bug reporting meeting with Sam, Jeremiah, and Nazar tomorrow, where we're going to start trying to establish a good formal bug reporting process, so we can start iterating on that as well. And beyond that, this week, just going to be continuing to set up the community team with Discord incident response plans, making sure there's a good like backup admin and things along those lines, and focusing on getting the documentation site live is going to be one of my major focuses this week as well. And beyond that, just continuing to support the community and working on some of the more day-to-day initiatives that I have.
One question I have is about macOS 12 fix. You submitted pull request, which supposedly fixes it. I saw also Ozgun commented. What is the status there? Does it help? Did you try it?
So I did attempt to do the build over the weekend. It was giving me a little bit of issues, but I I just need to verify that that test will work. It was more so just dependency issues trying to get my environment properly. But I got that resolved, so I will try that fix today and see if that resolves it.
Okay, it's really important to have that one before the next time we release a snapshot for the repo.
Definitely, I'll make that a priority.
Any other questions to Justin?
Yeah, can you give a little bit more color on the docs website? I know there was some feedback from Nizar on that. Do you have any specific like next steps or when you think that will be ready to publish on the website?
I'm just got to submit the update to the farming documentation in the mono repo. And beyond that, I just going to do one final run through on the actual doc site. I believe it's pretty much ready for a deployment. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any major typos or anything like that. But other than that, it's pretty much there. And just got to switch over the domain as well. It's on github.io right now, but I figured we'd throw it on like docs.subspace.network or something like that.
Okay, great.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks, Justin. What? You're next.
Yeah. Runtime last week, I worked a bit more on the grandpa finality. There's a PR out there. We're just waiting to merge it. If we haven't taken a look at it, do take a look at it. Also had some conversations with Sergey regarding how to update the relayers post the changes that we just made in the finality verifier and the palette feeds. I've had a few more things to be done on the Ethereum proof of work, how we can start looking at importing those blocks as well after my conversation with Sergey. This week, I want to focus more on the palette feed changes that we have a tech spec done for it. Nazar started the tech spec for palette feed changes that we want to add more updates to it. And I'm going to start working on them this week and also talk to Sergey on the relayer side for any changes if need to be done, and also support Sergey if I can help him on any of the Ethereum POW related work, especially on the runtime side that he has to work on. One last note, Lushan, I did have an experience migrating accounts, but that is very centralized. Like it's not decentralized at all. If you need some notes on that, like let me know. I can send you some more.
Sure.
Thank you. Any questions to that?
Yeah, Ved, like I was saying with Lu Chang and the Hard Spoons, we'd also like to do one forkless runtime upgrade that you'll lead before we go to incentivized testing as well. So we've got that process down. Great.
Yeah. Would it make sense if I already start a bit of a spec on like how exactly the operation would look like, just so that we get started with it? Yeah, cool. Makes sense. I'll start writing something down there.
Okay, so you would like me to write the steps
I can start a small spec on like how I'm thinking of a forkless runtime upgrade would look like. But if you need my support on like the account migration for the hard spoon that German was talking about, I can help you with anything. I had a bit of an experience there, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think since we got lots of different parts. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
There are quite a few like approaches for the ransom upgrades. I'm currently not sure which way we are going to take. Like we can use the sudo, we can use the governance. Yeah.
I think it will be pseudo to start, and then we'll eventually transition to on-chain governance, but that's not a priority right now.
Okay.
I will try and list down all the possible ways of doing an upgrade, and we'll start with the most easiest one. But I'll list down the rest of them so that we understand what kind of security that they bring in. But yeah, I'll list on those as well, Lu Chang.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think we've got a lot of different components of this deployment process. So we've got like our standard, like we don't have any breaking changes deployments, which Justin has kind of a basic release plan for, especially as it relates to the desktop app. Then we've got our forkless runtime upgrades, and then we've got our hard forks, our hard spins. And these are all part of a bigger process, which we need to identify. So Sam, if you could please, in our Notion, if you could just create in the protocol engineering section, if you could just create a page called deployments, and then we can start collecting. So we'll have one. Justin, you can move your releases spec into there. Ved, you can write your forkless runtime upgrade spec there, and Licheng, you can write the the hard spoon process in there as well. And we can at least have this all in one place and see what everybody's doing.
Yeah, maybe we can even start marking PRs in the future, whether they break something, whether something can be upgraded, or we need to like fork it.
Nice.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that we need to go, as we go through the roadmap, we need to put like, is this a breaking change or a soft fork, or there's going to be different points where this is going to occur that we should be able to predict.
One happy thing about this is most of the work is already like done by Parity for their repositories. I think we could most likely grab a bunch of them. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, the idea is not to reinvent the wheel here, but just to use a standard best practice. Just make sure that we're all on the same page as to what that is.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, on my side, in terms of code, I had another attempt at combining runtimes, and we have execution runtime included in the primary runtime, and Licheng has already taken advantage of that in his changes. Then there was an important fix for the consensus. Basically, we were verifying things that are not supposed to be verified during the verification stage. It should be verified during block import stage. I explained it previously, that got merged and included. Then increase the block request timeout on the farmer. That was basically a workaround for an issue in the RPC on the substrate side, where the WebSocket connection basically gets broken in some cases, and there is no way to detect it, otherwise they don't have any timeout. And that timeout was 5 seconds, and on some slower machines, like on shared CPU on VPCs, people had farmer crashing because of that, or like exiting because of that. So increase the timeout to 1 minute. Shouldn't really impact anything in most cases. And also did some first go through like secondary runtime and node implementation cleanup. There are a lot of things we inherited from Polkadot and from Cumulus that we do not need and no longer use. They're just there. So just removed anything that isn't used for sure. And there is another pull request which is still open to remove some more of that. Basically as a preparation to the stage that which I mentioned, to have them both together. So we can just run subspace node -- executor and have it. Instead of having like 2 binaries and mess with the chain spec included the same way and other things. It should be more like seamless workflow for those who want to try it out. And yeah, wrote a spec for the small spec for the feeds, how we can a little bit generalize it in the sense that there should be a way to unify the way we do it right now, and the way we'll do it with the validation for the Polkadot, and how we can extend it later to the Ethereum, and in the long-term future to the smart contracts verification. We discussed that with VAD. Doesn't seem to require a lot of changes in code, just like a little bit of refactoring. So he'll work on that a little bit. And we also had an extensive discussion with Jeremiah about the performance and implications and ways to run smart contracts, and what that means for Subspace. Hopefully we'll share some updates in the future based on the discussion. And yeah, This week, I'll probably try to combine those execution and like primary, secondary nodes together. If it takes too much time, I'll probably leave it to Lucheng and switch over to the networking work. I didn't have time to work on that last week. And yeah, a lot of non-coding tasks, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not sure, lately. Yeah, still working a lot on the hiring side. Any questions to me about any of this?
One question for me is on the farmer side. I know that we had a plan to merge the farmer into the farmer RTC and farmer node together. Is that still in the roadmap for us to actually have a single node that not only have farmer executor but also the actual farming node as well?
I don't think that was a plan. That is how it works in the desktop application. For the CI, it will probably be separate. And honestly, I expect that in the future, there will be multiple different farmer implementations for different like use cases, just like there are many miners for Ethereum and Bitcoin and everything. So this is just our reference implementation. We are doing our best in terms of what we can. But I do expect that others will have alternative implementations, and it's important to decouple them such that people can still use Subspace node and connect whatever farmer they want, or many farmers if they want. Like, they should have freedom to do so. But in desktop application, we'll package it into easy to use product.
Makes sense.
Okay, Sam, that's the first dev thing for you. Do you want to share anything?
Nope. I'm just taking everything in.
All right, Jeremiah, any closing thoughts?
No, I think we could probably just jump into Oskin's demo of the farmer.
Okay, let's do.
Yeah, because of the bug on my machine, like Leo, do you have it ready or should I go with my own build? We can't hear you, Leo.
Sorry, it's still building in Windows. My machine is still low.
Nice.
Have you tried using more threads? Although it depends how many threads your machine has.
Can you maybe download the 0.3.0 from just GitHub and run it? Do we need to build it?
Should I start?
Yeah, if you got something to show us, go ahead.
Okay. So now we are notifying the user with this desktop app will be started on boot. There is plenty of time to read it. And it's enabled by default on launch. So let me start by that. And if I disable it, and if I close it without going any further, if I reopen it, it will stay closed and it will not notify for the same thing again. So that's on the start on boot changes. Should I go into the importing the
Let's
farmer
do the
address?
happy path first, and then we'll do the advanced path.
So for quick start, when I click on this, it will not go to the password screen. It will go directly to the setup plot. Because of the bug I mentioned on my machine, it's not able to query the WebSocket. It's creating an error for the WebSocket connection. So we will not be able to proceed from this page. This will be disabled. This is the bug we are currently trying to debug. So that's why I can go from the beginning and show you the path to the advanced, like importing the reward address.
Okay, but if it did work, then the mnemonic that we get out would be the reward address mnemonic, not the signing key mnemonic, right?
Exactly. Like we will click start plotting, and then everything will be as the previous builds, and the reward address will be exactly as you mentioned, the public address of the mnemonic generated from Subspace desktop itself. And on the final screen, it will be again showed the reward address, which is the public address, public key of the mnemonic. So for the happy path, user doesn't need to do anything related to reward address or public key. It will just be auto-generated, and reward key will be, the reward address will be the same as public address. Is it fine?
Yep, keep going.
Okay, so I'm gonna reset and show you the reward address. When we click on advanced instead of quick start, it will ask for a reward address. This is disabled. There is no back button, but there is a skip button. So if you change your mind and you want to skip this process because this is an optional step, you can click on skip and it will go directly to this screen. To show you how it works, I'm going to reset again, and in here, when I type something, it will dynamically say the reward address is invalid. So let me grab a real one very quickly. Copy this one. Okay. And I can paste it. I will command V here. And you see this button is enabled and error message is gone. And if I delete something, it's again disabled. If I retype it, so this is working. And if I say continue, it will again direct to the setup log page. And if the bug was not present, it would have gone after this to the plotting, and then it would gone to the final dashboard. And on the dashboard, it would show the reward address under the far by column, the reward address I entered. So that's the idea.
Yeah, one minor nitpick is that it is saying that it should start with ST, which is the case for Subspace testnet.
Mm-hmm.
However, unless they actually add the network to their extension, they will not see it in the list. They'll not be able to like select it. So unless they go to the Polkadot.js Explorer
Mm-hmm.
and go to the like wallets, they will be able to get the ST version of it.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter because internally the public key is the same. It's just the prefix that is different for the UI purposes.
Yeah.
So maybe we can say like ST or starts with 5, or I believe the generic one.
Of course, or we can just get rid of it because this, let me show you one thing. This front-end verification is using a function that substrate exposed. So this is actually checking this address is a substrate address or not.
Okay, I think that will be sufficient. We can just say like, I don't know, the people were asking already, like which address do I have to specify? And I was just saying like anything really.
Yeah,
At
okay.
least
So
unless it's common. So maybe we can like tweak it somehow to make it less.
like any substrate
because-
address would work or something like that.
Yeah. Or like say generic address.
Okay, okay.
That's like
Okay.
how it's called. Something like that.
Maybe we could even add the default substrate address. I think a lot of us are used to like the 42 prefix, which is much more. Nazar, you're mute though.
Yeah, ST or 42.
Yeah,
Both should work.
42. That's much more easier to recognize.
And yeah, just confirmed it does already work as well with the default substrate address because of that query call. So it's just a phrasing thing we need to change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just to break it down in plain English, any valid substrate address can be used here. It doesn't have to be a subspace testnet address.
Yes.
Okay, but it will be translated to our specific address format. So if I am a user who already has a substrate wallet for some other chain or for Polkadot, and I import that address, then how do I know how to translate that when I search on the Subspace block explorer to see if I'm getting rewards or what that is in in our network.
We can probably show the subspace version below this text field.
Yeah, probably.
And you'll see, if you go to Polkadot.js Explorer, you will see in the wallets the subspace version, and it will be like a name that you specify in the extension. So you'll see it anyway.
Yeah, so when we choose from here, it changes the address. So it should be fine.
Quick question, like, so if I'm coming from some kind of like maybe Polkadot address, maybe which starts with 123, could we already show, since we have a lot of white space below the address there, could we show like subspace address and the default subspace address? Even if I put in whatever address into the field, that converts into subspace, so that it's much easier to just copy and then like go to the JS and then like paste it there. Do that make sense? Because we can pretty much get the public key of the address from whatever address that they give in. We just need to re-encode it, right? So
Yeah, let's change the prefix.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say, that I think we're on the
Yeah,
same
same
page
for
there.
me.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think what we can also do is now that we have this notion of the reward address, we can just make that reward address visible, like in the dashboard at the very end with a link, so that all you have to do is click it and it loads our block explorer with that reward address set. So it's just super simple for the user. It just loads, the Subspace block explorer in your default browser with a search for that address.
Of course, yeah. It should be easy to do. It's not yet implemented, but what you suggested would be easy to implement, so we can do it.
Cool. This is looking great, guys. One quick comment: instead of skip, it's kind of a weird practice to like let the user skip something. It should just be cancel, and it should revert them back to the screen where they have to choose the other path.
Okay, I can make this into a back button, and it can go back to the main screen.
I would just do cancel.
Okay.
We don't want to give them like, they don't have to know the workflow or whatever. It should just be like a cancel or approve or whatever.
Yeah, if it's canceled though, I would put the button on the left though. Is it fine?
Sure. We can talk about that more in the sync.
Okay.
On the desktop app.
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you, Leo. Or sorry, thank you, Oskin, for going through that with us. Okay.
I got a comment.
Go ahead.
Before closing the desktop app. On Windows, I realized that when we restart the app from the menu, if the node and farmer are still running, they got locked all the folders inside the app directory. So when I tried to reset it and tried to delete the application folder, I got this error that these folders are read-only and we cannot delete. So when
you need to stop farmer and
yeah, we need to stop farmer first before we launch the app. That's the thing.
I also got that on the trying to running the node in the client and trying to run the desktop app, is that I think it just knocks the client over and you get an error saying it's already listening on that port. So I think you should actually never run them separately.
You need to customize the parameters if you want to run them concurrently, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, guys. I think we are
one last thing,
time.
Nizar. Sorry. Nizar, could you
Sure.
just give an overview, a conceptual overview of how in the multi-replica plotting that we're about to release, how just for everybody on the team to really understand, like what we went through about how we have this notion of a minimum or an expected minimum amount of blockchain history and how that impacts this?
So the current generation of what we have deployed is everyone is plotting the same amount of the whole history. So if the history is huge, they need a lot of space. If the history is small, they have a little space. They don't really have to choose unless they run multiple instances of farmer and they specify parameters so they don't conflict and everything. So the first step was to actually allow user to have a parameter on the farmer to specify how much space they want to use. So you can say like 10 gigabytes is what I want to dedicate to Subspace, and it will use 10 gigabytes. After that, we've implemented the support for the partial replica, where the max size of the replica is actually enforced on the consensus level. So you cannot have a plot bigger than 100 gigabytes physically. If you have it, for some reason, pieces outside of the range of 100 gigabytes from your node ID will be just rejected by consensus. So there is no point to have it. You have to like partially replot to keep it in place. And what Ivan is about to release is multi-replica, where if you have more than 100 gigabytes, you can create multiple replicas. So the farmer will create multiple internal plots inside of it under one cover, and it will be able to use as much space as you have, be it 1 gigabyte, 1 terabyte, or 1 petabyte. It doesn't really matter. It will be able to support anything. And on the farmer side, on like a desktop application side, we had that like parameter that was specifying how much space you want to dedicate, and that's why we have an estimate. It was disabled because it didn't make sense in the earlier version, but we'll bring it back. So the user will be able to specify how much space they want to use. And on CLI, we actually made the parameter required, so you have to specify how much space you want to allocate. Otherwise, it will not start. This is like one of the breaking changes.
About that, why the boundary on 100 gigabyte?
That is okay. So there is a trade-off between having a lot of small plots and many, or like one big plot. So one big plot is potentially more useful, but we want to also make it such that people have to plot pieces around their node ID, and 100 gigabytes is like a reasonable size. If you have, let's say, 1 terabyte, you'll have to create just 10 plots, not 10,000 plots. The more plots you have, the more overhead you have in terms of finding a solution. So 10 times is not really a problem. Even 100 times will probably not be a big deal once you have like a big hard drive. But going below that is really not desirable. We'll still have to like revisit this parameter in the future. What it will be? Maybe it will be like 1 terabyte. We'll see.
So it's for more equally distributing the pieces to the network?
Sorry?
So it's for more equally distributing the pieces to the network?
Yeah, basically, if you have no limit, you can just plot a few pieces initially, like 100 gigabytes pieces initially, and you could just stop updating it ever. There is no incentive to like plot new pieces. But this new design, as the blockchain gets bigger, you have to actually replot some of the pieces, because some of those pieces you plotted earlier, like the range will get denser, and it will just go out of scope of 100 gigabytes. So you have to like shrink it over time.
Thank you.
Question on farmer blacklisting or like ignoring if it's coming out of a plot that you're not supposed to do it. Would that be done on a runtime, or would it be done mostly on the local side of it? Because with runtime, I'm seeing like you need to have an efficient way to actually know the pieces within which they can actually have.
It's already done.
Okay.
This is part of the consensus. It's implemented during block import pipeline, because some of the things that required for that, I believe, are available in the client. Also, that is basically rejecting the solution, so like it will be invalid. The block listing is a separate thing. That's equivocation, and that one is implemented in the runtime. Well, it's both, but it has a portion in the runtime to store it.
Okay, and just to be clear on the implementation challenge you have here, is this kind of expects a 100 gigabyte plot. So it is, or sorry, a 100 gigabyte blockchain history to be able to create these 100 gigabyte plots. So it expects some seeding of the blockchain. So that means that whenever we start testing this, it's not gonna work out. Like the assumption here basically is that whenever we deploy this, we will have at least 100 gigabytes of history. We're not supporting this case of having many, many small partial plots. We're not expecting that to be an actual environmental sort of use case we want to support, because there's actually a lot of complexity around doing that and efficiently updating it, which we're trying to avoid, because that's just like a stage of the network which we don't ever expect to actually see.
Yeah, basically, if you have less history than that, your plot will be like not full, which basically doesn't utilize the space that you have, which is unfortunate. So we'll just seed some history up front.
So that means like DevNet and FarmNet are going to have to get remerged again in order for this to really work the way we expect it to. Okay, thanks, Nazar.
Okay, I think this is all we have for today. And we'll see everyone on YouTube next week. See you guys.